Welcome back, CIS 1400. Hopefully you're coming to this video with the understanding of selection structures and looping structures, because we're about to put it all together in a guessing game. So a very simple game that can allow us to try to guess a randomly generated number from the computer in hopefully 7 attempts or less. So that's going to be kind of what we want to do. If you haven't yet watched the videos on what this module is all about and those previous examples, please do those first, otherwise this one might be a little bit hard to cover and get all the way through. So without further ado, what we're going to make is a guessing game. Just to be clear on the rules and what we're trying to do, the computer will generate a random number from 1 to 100 for us to guess. We will have 7 attempts to guess the number. And if we guess it, we win. If we don't, we lose. So that's kind of the basics of what we want to do here. So I'm going to go through flowchart or pseudocode, flowchart, and the actual Python code. So it could be a bit of a longer video, but kind of stick with me. Watch it in 3 different parts. Watch it, do it, watch it, do it, watch it, do it for yourself, or try to do it before you watch it. So maybe at the very least, watch the pseudocode here, or make up your own version if you want to try. I might have a different way of going about it than you might have a different way of going about it, but as long as we keep these same rules, we should come up with something that's pretty similar here. So I'm going to get into it real quick with my pseudocode first, and then I'll get into representing this with a flowchart. So the first thing I'm going to have is my main method. I want to start thinking in abstractions, kind of big ideas. So I'm going to go module main. And in this main method, there'll be some little bits of code, other things that are just going to be abstractions calling other methods. So first I'm going to come up with my variable declarations for the main method. So in this, I'm going to need an integer for the guess that I'm about to take, and when I do make this, I am going to have to almost declare it in Python as well. I'm going to make it equal to the value none to begin with, because I already know what language I'm going to be working with. If I was working with, say, like Java or something like that, I might initialize it to a value outside this range, which I could do in Python too, maybe a -1 or something like that. Maybe that would make more sense, but it really won't matter, just as long as it's not a number within this range, because we don't want it to come out true or the answer right off the bat. I need an integer for the answer. I need also an integer for the number of attempts that we're about to take, and I'm going to set that equal to none or 0 as well as I go about that. So when I declare that, it's going to get set to 0 right off the bat. Okay. So in this main method, we're going to probably want to display some sort of welcome message to the game. So maybe we'll call a method called display welcome. And what that'll do is just kind of print out the rules of the game and just say, hey, welcome to a guessing game. You've got to guess a number between 1 and 100. You've got 7 attempts. Good luck. So something very simple there. Then we will probably obtain or set the answer to random from 1 to 100. And we'll go through how to do that in a little bit. We're going to have to let the user input a guess. Okay. And not a guessing, but just a guess. Okay. After they input a guess, we'll want to always increase the number of attempts. And then we want to kind of get into the role of the game. So the role of the game here is, while my guess is not the correct answer, I want to tell the person if it's too high or too low and get another guess from them. So there's a looping activity in here, a conditional structure. And conditional structures will always start with the word while. My guess is not equal to, and we can kind of use some Python code here, like the exclamation equals answer. I want to make sure that I check to see if it's too low or too high and display that to the person so they can make a new educated guess. So if I guess something like 75 and the answer happens to be 97, I want to say that my guess was too low because I want to guess higher. I want to get closer to 70 or 97 this time. So let's call a method here that will help us do those things. We'll say check high-low. Okay, and in order for this method to work, it'll have to know what the guess was and what the answer was, or it won't be able to compare the two values. And once we have those compared and it's printed out whether it was too high or too low, let's get another guess and increase attempts. Okay, and we'll just keep doing that process over and over and over again until either my guess is not equal to my answer, or I should say, and my attempts are less than 7, because once we reach 7 attempts, we should kind of bow out of this game. So I'm going to use this compound conditional structure that says I want to continue doing these 3 things, check if it's too high or low, input a new guess, and increase attempts, while my guess is not equal to the answer, and my attempts is still less than 7. So I kind of have these 2 control variables here, and that's fine for what I want to do. So I've got this compound condition that will only run all 3 of these instructions if both this and this yield true statements. I still have guesses left to make, and I'm still making incorrect guesses. So either way, if I make a correct guess, I'll get out of this method. If I lose on my attempts, I get out of this little method while loop. And so now I am out of this method for one of 2 reasons. I'm not sure what it is, but maybe we'll have another method here to kind of help us determine it. So we'll call a method called maybe like Endgame. And in this method, we'll pass in, well, we could pass in a couple different pieces of information. We can pass in the guess and the answer again, or we could pass in the number of attempts. I like guess and answer, simply because it's a little bit more concrete, just like what we have up here. And this will tell us whether or not we left the method because we got it right or because we ran out of attempts. So I'll be checking in this method to see if the guess is equal to the answer. And if it is, print some sort of winning message. And if it's not, print some sort of losing message. So now that I've got the main method kind of figured out here, okay, we'll end the main, and now I should start talking about these other methods that I'm displaying or calling. So I've got this display welcome, I've got a check high-low that I got to make, and an end game method that I want to make. So let's make those methods really quickly. So we'll go method, let's do display welcome. And this method doesn't take any arguments or anything. In this method, we'll just want to print a welcome message. And maybe we'll want to print the rules of the game. Okay. And once that's all said and done, we'll make sure we return to the flow of the program. And that'll end display welcome. Okay. The next method we'll want to make is the check high-low. Or I should say module, doesn't matter. So let's change this word from method to module. Be a little bit more consistent here. What do we say? Check high-low, right? Okay, so in this one we need an integer for the guess, right? And an integer for the answer. And those are my local variables, what I'm passing in. They don't have to be named the same thing, but it kind of makes sense here to at least allow them to be, because it just reads a little bit better. There's no declarations for this one, at least there shouldn't be. What we want to do is check, see if the guess was greater than the answer. And if that's true, we want to print that my next guess should be too low, or that this guess was too high. So we'll say that our guess was too high. Okay, and now else we'll print the guess was too low. And we don't have to worry about the whole equal scenario, because there's no way for it to be equal at this point, because I wouldn't be in the loop if it was. Remember, this would turn out false if they were equal to each other, which means I would never get to this line of code here where I'd be checking high-low. So the guess is either greater than the answer or it's less than the answer. There is no in between. There is no such thing as equal to the answer. And so right now, when we're done with that, we can return to the main method, and that'll end the check high-low. And the last thing we'll want to do is create the method for end game. So let's do that. So let's go module game. Again, we're passing in an integer for the guess and an integer for the answer. And now when we leave the game, we leave it for one of two reasons. We either got the answer correct or we ran out of attempts. And so that's why I need this passed in, because I need to print something based on some decision getting made here. So if the guess is equal to the answer, then we'll print a winning message. Otherwise, we'll print a losing message. Right? And then when it's all said and done, we'll print a kind of thank you message. Thanks for playing message. Again, it's pseudocode. It doesn't have to be perfect. I don't even know exactly what I'm going to print or anything like that. I just need some plans. So this seems like a pretty solid plan to me, where I've got everything kind of laid out and listed out exactly what I want to do and how I want to do it. So let's take this and see if we can turn it into some sort of flowchart for ourselves. We'll kind of bounce back and forth between what we need to do. So I'm going to draw.io. I'm going to create a new diagram. We'll call it guessing game. I'll just use the root folder for now on my drive. I'll let it build, and then it's time to start getting into it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to come in with our flowchart. Okay, we'll come in with our terminal symbols. So terminator, I'm going to go with a start, and we will up the. See if we can zoom in a little. Oops, sorry about that. That's way too big. Okay, that's better. All right, so we'll break that down, and from the start right away, there's nothing to declare or anything like that. We're just going to call the main method, so it's a predefined process. All right, we're going to call main, and we'll put that in the center, bottom the center. So that'll keep things pretty straightforward. And then this is going to end the program as soon as we're done with that. So we'll end or stop. Right? I like having the start stops. It's probably not necessary, but that's just my way of doing it. Okay, so we'll move this over to the side because it's my program in general. Let's start building that main method. So I'll come in with my terminator again, and I'm going to start talking about the main here. All right. The main has some declarations to make, so we're going to come up with our process symbol, drag it out, declarations. And if we remember correctly, we had an integer for the guess, which we said was none to begin with. We had an integer for the answer, which we didn't have a value for, and we had an integer for attempts, which we set equal to 0 to begin with because we needed to initialize it. So I'm going to drag that down, make it a little smaller, bring it over here in line with the main and connect. Okay, so from there we had our declarations. Now it's time to call the display welcome message. So that's a predefined process. Two parentheses, we'll again put that towards the center of everything. Stretch that out so it's easily visible. Condense, line it up. Flow lines from here to here. Okay, next thing we wanted to do was set the answer to the random and input my guesses and increase attempts. So for the set my random, that's going to be a process. So we're going to set the answer equal to a random from 1 through 100. Okay. So again, connect. We're going to input the guess. So my input symbol's here. Send that to the center. Up and connect. Okay, and we're going to also increase the number of attempts. And these have to be done in a particular order. So we need to make sure that we have this answer kind of figured out, at least before we start checking the condition and things like that. But we really should only increase the number of attempts after we've input a guess. So we'll go attempts plus equals 1. Let's kind of clean things up. And there we go. All right, after that, we're getting into our while loop and our decision-making structure. And by doing this call check high-low, we really kind of simplify what needs to be written inside of our flowchart quite a bit. So we're going to come up with a decision symbol here. We haven't had that one yet. And we're going to say while guess is not equal to answer and attempts is less than 7. Okay, so let me kind of stretch that out a little bit so we can see it. Connect from here to here. Move that over a little. Come on, move. There we go. And then here's where we want to start branching out a little bit. So we're coming up to this predefined process for call the check high-low, and then we'll input guess and input increase attempts a little bit. So I'm going to come up with a predefined process. I'm going to do this over here on the right-hand side. I always like having the true on the right and the false on the left if I can. And so we're going to call check high-low. And remember, we have to input the guess and the answer to this one. So we'll stretch that out a little. We'll put this in the center. Okay. And I'm going to draw my flow line from the corner to the top. Okay. And on the flow line, I can write true or yes. Okay. So just click it and type. And then from there, I want to basically do these two things again. So I'm just going to copy those and paste them and bring them down so they're a little bit easier to work with. So there we go. And we'll connect our flow lines. And then we'll connect the flow line back to the question. So this is where things get a little tricky. So I want to come out and around, right? And you can't just bring it all the way back. It tends to not bend on you. So let go here and then take this and bend it out. And that'll give you some more handles to work with. So here I want to bring it back to there. Okay. Now on the false side of things, when I drop out and I'm done with the looping structure, I can bring it down and then I can start doing some other things with it. So for me, I want to, as soon as I'm done, call this endgame message. So we're going to bring in our predefined process one more time, bring it right over towards the center. We're going to call end game. Right? Is that what we called it? Yep, end game, and that is based on guess and answer again. We'll stretch that out. We'll put it in the middle. There we are. We'll line everything up. Drop our flow lines from here to there. Line it up nice and neat, and there we go. And then that should then bring us into the end of this main method, so we can come straight to a return statement, right? Let me draw that in first. So my terminator, and we'll return. So there's the main. The rest of them come together pretty quickly as well. So I could grab all these and kind of shimmy them over a little bit so they're off to the side. So let's just move this over so it's nice and neat with everything. There we are. And then I can start making some of the other modules that I need to make. The display welcome, the end game, and the check high-low. So let's just build those really quick. So up here, the display welcome should be pretty quick and easy. Display welcome. Bring that up. And that's just going to be a couple outputs, if anything, nothing crazy. So here we're going to print a welcome message, and then we will print the rules as well. So we'll put that in the center, and we'll open that up a little bit. And we'll display print our rules and expectations for the game. So we'll close that up. We'll make a flow line from here to here. So real simple. Oops, come on, give me the handles. There we go. And again, we'll return. Let's make the other modules we need. We need the check high-low. So I'll bring that over here. And we can always get more paper by dragging these out. It ends up giving us more. So don't worry if you get short on space. Okay, you can always get more. So we'll do check high-low. Right, and for this we needed the guess and an integer for the guess and an integer for the answer. Spread that out so it looks a little nicer. Okay, so here, the check high-low, if we look at that module, we need to check a condition, print if it was too high or too low, and return. So here's another decision-making structure. So this is where things get a little bit easier with modules. When you have these nested structures, especially like a condition in a loop, the flowchart's a lot simpler if you can somehow wrap that condition into its own little module or function. That way you don't have diamonds within diamonds and lots of different things eating away at this and flow lines going in all sorts of directions. So if you can keep it simple like this, it's much easier to work with. So first things first, I'm going to come straight into a decision structure. Where's my diamond at? It is, I'm sure you're screaming at it. All right, there it is. So I want to check to see if the guess is greater than the answer. And if the answer is true, yes, we want to print something. We're going to print that it was too high. So center. And if it wasn't too high, we want to print that it was too low. So I'm going to put this on the other side. Take out the word high and make it low. And I'm going to start connecting these flow lines out. So I'm going to connect from module name to decision, from here to here, and from here to here. And on this side, I'm going to write yes or true. And on this side, I'm going to write false. Whoops. Excuse that. And then I'm going to connect these back together to my return statement, my terminator, which should end up right underneath return. Okay. And I'm going to connect both of these back to there. And if you're like me and you need things to be nice and neat, you can connect these, and you can get rid of the arrows if need be, or just drag it down till they overlap. Okay, and then just keep working them a little bit here and there till everything seems to work out just fine. So we'll move that down. Oh, come on, just a little bit. How about we move this one up? There we go. Now it looks a lot neater. So I've got that working for me. The last module we'll need to do is our endgame, which is pretty similar to our check high-low, to be perfectly honest with you. It's a decision structure, print a couple things, and print a thank you message saying to do it. So I'm actually going to take this to keep my life a little simple. I'm going to copy and paste it, just kind of drag it down here, because it is basically the same structure. I'm just changing some of the words. So in here, we're going to do our endgame, int for the guess, and an int for the answer. And if the guess is equal to the answer, if that's true, we want to print a winning message. And if it's false, we want to print a losing message. And I'm going to take this and kind of delete it for a sec while I bring in one more print statement for a thanks for playing. We'll move that towards the center. And then here I'll put my return, okay, my terminator. And we'll connect. And now I've got a flowchart that seems to work pretty well. So my program starts here, calls the main method, and then it stops. The main method has a couple things in it. This is kind of holding my game and has my game loop in it. So it's keeping track of the guess, the answer, the number of attempts. It's displaying this welcome message. So as soon as this calls, this line of code or this flow runs. Once it's done, it returns back and exits through here. So this return statement then brings me through this arrow. I set the answer to a random number from 1 to 100, input the guess, increase the number of attempts, check to see if I should play the game. If I do play the game, I go through check high-low, and I input another guess and increase attempts. And you notice how this happens twice throughout the thing. I could have made a module for that, but that module would be a little bit more efficient, possibly with return statements and things of that nature, and the use of global variables in our program, which is something you'll learn more about as you take some higher order Python courses. And we may get into it later in the course, but for now, I'm just going to keep it pretty simple. They're just simple lines of code, so I don't think they need an entire module for them. And then when we're done playing the game, we end the game, and again, we run this module here then, and we finally finish it out and stop the program. So now I think it's time to actually kind of code this up and see what's going to happen. So let's get over to PyCharm, and we'll create a quick file. We'll do it, call it a guessing game. All right, so if we remember a little bit here, there are no such things as declarations in Python. We kind of declare as we initialize values. So there's a few things that we can do for ourselves. So first thing I'm going to come up with is my main method. Okay, so I'm going to go with def is the keyword to instantiate a module in Python, as we learned in last week's lessons in Module 3. I'm going to call this the main method. Okay. And in that main method, we're going to do exactly what we said we were going to do. We're going to come up with some variables and call some things as we go through. So let's start building this as we want, as our plan kind of is laid out. So let's get our guess. I'm going to set that equal to none to begin with. Okay. I'm going to get my answer. Okay. And that's equal to a random number. Okay, now I don't think we've talked about, well, first we need our display welcome. What am I doing here? So let's call the display welcome message. Okay, and that's going to show error until we actually write it. Okay, so don't worry about that. We'll have that module down here as we go through, and I can actually start writing it now. Well, I'll leave it for later. So we'll have our display welcome. We're going to set our guess equal to num. Our answer is a random number, and this is where things get a little tricky with random numbers in Python. To use a random number in Python, we actually need a library to be imported into our program. The library is called random. Easy enough to do. You type import random at the top of any of your programs, and you can see it dips into the library folder, the frameworks, built-in Python scripts, and so on and so forth. To use, it's actually fairly simple. What we do is we access the random module by using the keyword random, and I put a dot there. And you'll notice in PyCharm now it gives me tons of stuff that I can work with that are built into this. For me, I just want a random integer, so there's a randint function that I can use to help myself out. And that function requires two arguments, an A and a B. The A is the lowest number you want to be your random number, and B is the highest. So I want a random number between 1 and 100. So fairly simple to work with. So random numbers, easy enough. Import random, call them using the random module. So random identifier first, dot, and then the function name. Once you have that, supply it with the information it needs. I want to generate a number from 1 to 100, so I type 1, 100. If you want 50 to 100, type 50, 100. If you want negatives in there, throw negatives in there, but it's got to be low to high, smallest number to largest. Okay. Okay, now based on my flowchart, I've got the display, I set the random, I need to input a guess and a number of attempts. So I guess guess is not equal to none here. I actually want to get the guess, so let's go guess equals an integer version of some input. Enter a guess from 1 through 100. Okay, so there's kind of my message here. Okay, and now I want to increase the number of attempts. So before I do this, I need to set attempts equal to 1. Okay. There's really nothing to increase because I haven't had one yet, but I can set it to 1 because I've made one guess by now. Okay. So let's get into the looping is not equal to the answer, and we can just explicitly say the word and in Python, which is nice. My attempts is less than 7. Okay. I want to continue to do some things. What is it I want to do? Well, I want to check high-low. Based on the guess I took and the answer. I want to get a new guess and increase the number of attempts. So really, I just want to take this line of code right here and do it again. We might even print something here. Probably should have put this in the pseudocode saying, sorry, incorrect. And then it'll say whether or not if it was too high or too low, which I can get another guess. And then increase attempts. So attempts plus equals 1. Okay. All right, and that's the game. As soon as we're done with that, we either left the loop because we got it right or because we ran out of attempts. Either way, it's time to do the end game check. And so we'll pass in the guess and the answer for that. And that should finish out the game for us. Okay, and that will end the main method. So let's write some of these other methods that we had to write as we built this out. So here we go. We've got the display welcome. All right, so let's get into that. We'll display def. And the display welcome is just going to say a quick print statement saying, hey, welcome to our guessing game. Print, and then I print our rules. The computer has chosen a number from 1 to 100 for you to guess. Print, you have 7 guesses to get the answer. Good luck. Right? And so that'll kind of switch things out. So now my game will kind of start here. And that finishes out the display welcome. So we'll end that module. Let's do the next module, def, what is it, check high-low. And this module needs a guess and an answer. Again, in Python, we don't strictly state what data types are going to be. If I wanted to, I absolutely could by doing something like this. I want this to be of type int. I want this to be of type int. Even though it's not strictly saying it has to be, it's at least giving me that understanding. So later on, if I needed to use some sort of function from whatever that object may be, it'll kind of generate a list of functions for me to pull from, but completely unnecessary at this point in time. So for the check high-low, we remember there is a quick decision-making structure to do. So we'll say if my guess is greater than my answer, we want to print that the guess was too high. All right. If the guess was not greater than the answer, so else, we want to print that the guess was too low. All right. And after that, that's all that module did. It returned back to the program flow, so it's a pretty simple module to work with. All right. So we'll end that method. Oops. Check high-low. And we'll finish up with the Endgame module. And that needed the guess and the answer again. Again, if you wanted to cast these as integers, you absolutely could, or at least tell me that they're going to be integers. Unnecessary at this point in time. So in this module, we needed to understand whether or not the guess was equal to the answer so that we can say if we won or lost, because we don't know why we left the loop. We just know we left the loop. We either left the loop because we won or we left the loop because we lost. So it would be a good idea to kind of check why we left. So if the guess is equal to the answer, let's print some sort of winning message. Hey, you got it. Good job. You won. And if we didn't, we can print something like, hey, tough break. You missed it. And we could print out the answer, okay? That would probably be nice. The answer was, and then we can print it out. And since we passed it in, which is why I wanted to go this route, it's because now we can print out what the answer was, okay? And then when it's all said and done, we can print a thank you message. Thanks for playing. I hope you enjoyed it. And that's it. Okay, there's your program. The last thing we need to do, since all of these are methods or modules, we need to call this module, and that's what this whole start-stop is. Start, call the method, stop, we're done. So in order to do that in Python, it's pretty simple. I like putting in this little line of code where we want the if name underscore underscore name equals main. That way this particular script only runs if I execute this file. If I were to ever import this file and use these functions someplace else, the actual main method wouldn't execute when I import it. So for us right now, we just want to call the main method, and that's it. Okay. So I'm going to try this out, see how it works, see if I need to do any debugging in terms of my program development cycle, because even though I've planned pretty well, flow charted, it seems to look like it's all going in the right direction. I could easily have some sort of logical mistake here. Maybe I'm going one too many attempts or one too few. So it's all things that I want to check and make sure that it's actually working appropriately. So let's kind of pick it up and see what happens. So we can see our flow here. We've got our welcome message getting printed. It says I have 7 guesses that gets the answer. Good luck. I can now type in my answer. Let's try typing in something like a 50. And it says, sorry, it was incorrect. The guess was too low. Let's try typing in a 75. Okay, sorry, incorrect, guess was too high. Now, I see a problem with this right off the bat is I really have no idea if that's working correctly because I don't know what the answer is. So let's play it through one more time, and then I'll show you how you can kind of help yourself out into the debugging process. So right now this said it was too high, 75 was too high, 50 was too low. Let's try something like 67. All right, that was too high. Let's try 60. Well, that was too high. Let's try 55. That was too low. Let's try 57. Too high, 56. And it says I got it. Good job. Thanks. You won. How many guesses did I end up taking? Make sure I didn't go out of bounds here. I took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th guess, and it said that I got it. So let's take care of this whole too high, too low thing and actually make sure we understand what's going on there. The one thing that I do want to do is every time I do this before I take a guess again, I would really like to have kind of a blank line here so I can kind of separate some of this messaging from what I'm doing here. So let's just break that up a little bit. And as I'm doing this, maybe it would be wise as soon as I generate the random number, let's just print it real quick. Even though it's not part of the game, I would just like to see it. That way I know what it is off the top of my head, and I can always comment this line of comment code out later when I actually want to distribute it and play the game. So let's do that once real fast. And I can already see that the answer is 58. Now I'll at least be able to judge if my too high, too low is actually working. Okay? So let's go through this. Let's type in 50. Oh, it said it was too low, and I know it was too low because I guessed 50. The answer was 58. Let's judge 60. Okay, sorry, it was incorrect. That was too high. That's right. I know that's too high. So let's try just nailing it right on the head and go 58. Let's see. Make sure we get out of the loop here. If we don't, something's wrong. We got to fix it. And it says, hey, you got it. Good job. You won. Thanks for playing. I hope you enjoyed it. So that worked. Let's debug it again and make sure that we only get to take 7 guesses. So let's kind of count it up. I know the answer is 93. Let's just guess some random values. And I know the too high and too low is not working or working fine. So let's guess 10. Let's guess 11. Let's guess 12. 13. Okay, so what does that make? 1, 2, 3, 4 guesses so far. let's guess 14 for 5, 15 for 6, 16 for 7 guesses, and I took 7 guesses, and it says, hey, tough break, you missed it. The answer was 93. I hope you enjoyed it. So it seems like all the prerequisites of my program are working just fine. So I was able to put it all together. I've got looping structures, selection structures, I've got modules put together, and it seems to work just fine. Now that I know that it's working, I could delete this line of code. I may not want to. Just put a comment there and hashtag it out. That way it's not part of the actual script anymore, but you can still put it in there if you ever do some modifications or changes to this in any way, shape, or form. You can always have that answer get printed for you really, really quick and easy. So it's a really nice, convenient way of going about it. And there's a real basic and simple guessing game where you can see that we can see what the guess is, and try to guess it, see if we can do it in 7 attempts or less, which should be plenty of attempts to go through if you're playing it right. And there you go. So hopefully that kind of helps put a nice bow on this module for you, where we could see how we can use all of this together, and you start getting an actual program out of this, something you can play with and work with. So we've got our main method, looks like an outline, runs really well. We've got it broken up into some chunks here really well for my display, welcome, check, high, low, and end guess game. So keep all of this in mind as you start getting into your lab work this week, the assignment, where you'll be writing a bunch of simple methods for me just to make sure that you can write them. No pseudocode or flowchart in that particular assignment. But then remember, next module, next week, is a full project. Well, you'll be writing a program from scratch, and you will be writing flowcharts, pseudocode, and the actual code for it. So you're going to have to make sure you can put it all together. So this week, I want you to just focus in on writing the Python script and getting used to the if structures, the whiles, and the for loops. I know there wasn't a for loop in here, but you take what you can get and you use what you have to use. So keep that in mind. If there are any questions, please post them in the discussion forum so that everyone can see the question and the answer to them. And yeah, let's keep this bus rolling. We got some good stuff coming up on the way with functions, and then finally some object-oriented design. So that wraps it up for this episode. We'll catch you in the next module, and I will explain there what your project is and give you a demo of what it should look like exactly so you can help replicate it. All right, thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.